Okay, good afternoon. It is Tuesday, the 17th. As we rapidly move through this course, far more rapidly than I would like, although I don't think you all share the same that point of view. I understand that. You're not hurting my feelings. I still have these granny glasses on because cataract surgery is all healed and done, but I still have to take 300,000 drops, and I can't use my old glasses, so I'm using my wife's reading glasses, and it doesn't exactly enhance my appearance, although a few things really do that. I'm going to continue with the with another module and another video accompanied by a PowerPoint to we kind of indicated a decision I made late last week, actually, and that is that the syllabus is the syllabus. You are expected to follow the syllabus. The DQs, for the most part, are lined up with the readings and the provisions that are on the syllabus, and I'll continue to give you material that aligns with that. These posts that I've given you last week and now today, and actually it's from 2 weeks ago, for that matter, are the other component, which I don't think the syllabus does a really good job with. And since this course is about change, for heaven's sakes, you need to have um, a good measure of experience and information about what you need to do as a prospective leader to not only get a change off the ground, but to keep it off the ground so that it can sustain itself and do what it is that you want to do. And so what I'm basically doing is sharing a PowerPoint that I've broken up into segments that is based on pretty much on my first book, which is Futures-Based Change Leadership, but is also incorporated in any of the other books that that for me that are posted, including the Collective Mindset to a lesser extent, but to some extent. So I think that material has more meaning to you in terms of the skill sets and dispositions that you need in order to become the kind of change leader that I would expect you to be if I were hiring you. And so we'll continue with that. And again, I'll go back to the syllabus and uh, support it with some points, and we'll go from there. The only other thing I wanted to say, I think I did say last week, was that if this were a longer course, I would have given you an assignment like this, and so that you would have created your own action plan to institute a change. In fact, when you actually take the state exam, you'll get a question like that. The question won't be specific to what I will be showing you, but what I'm giving you will be specific enough to have you answer that question with great confidence as such. What they'll do is they'll give you sets of data to look at, and then they'll ask you to pretty much show how you would approach it to institute a change. And they'll ask you for what your strategic plan might look like, and so forth. And so what I'm doing is I'm kind of preparing you for that. Well, not because I want to prepare you for the exam. I don't believe in doing that specifically, but by the same token, it's also intended to uh, make sure that you've got those muscles so that you know what you're doing. And I guarantee you that the skill sets I'm showing you and or the readings from any of the books I've recommended will, in fact, prepare you for that better than most present leaders have. I know that sounds arrogant and cocky, but and I don't ordinarily sound like that, but I want to emphasize that point. Uh, Only one piece of business I want to mention for the moment is that I think about five of you have asked for permission to read a given book for your review. And I'll talk more about that next week, but another five of you have not. And so you've got to get back to me about that, because if you don't give me the book that you're reading, even if it's one of the books on the list, I'm going to say, you didn't tell me what you were doing, and I'm going to push it back at you. So you owe me an email. Those of you who haven't done it, you owe me the email to tell me what's going on. Some of you seem to be having trouble with Canvas. I've said a million times, I'm not a big fan of Canvas either, but it's the dog in the race, so we all have to work with it. I'm happy to talk to people about it. I've done several phone conversations the last week or so with some people who felt like they were overwhelmed by the idea of Canvas, and I'm perfectly willing to help you with that. However, I will also say two other things, and that would be if you're watching this today, Tuesday the 17th, tomorrow the 18th, there will be another office hour. A couple of people have already said they'll be on for this coming week, and that's great. But any one else of you who wants to do that should take advantage of that. And I will videotape it if I have somebody to talk to. If it's just doing what I'm doing now, I'm not going to videotape it. The other premise is I forgot. Oh, also I mentioned to a couple of students that I'm not going to demonstrate it as such, but if you go into Canvas and go that on the left side menu, I think it's on the very bottom. You'll see they don't designate it as help, but it is help. It's at the very bottom line. If you hit the help button, dig around, try to find it, or even Google for it, you will access that. And the help button is very helpful. Not to be a wise guy, extremely helpful actually. And what I generally do when I'm having issues with Canvas, which is often, then what I do is I click on chat, and it'll ask you three questions, basically saying, is this something you need to know this minute or yesterday, or is this something that you want to know soon, or is this is like or is this something that can wait? And I always say it's an emergency. And if I press the button inside of a minute or two, I'll be chatting with somebody, and they're very helpful, extremely helpful. I promise you that. So they will help you find some things that you may be confused about. Otherwise, I'll be happy to deal with that on or at the office hours. So let's keep going with that with the change, futuring and change premises that line up with the PSEL standards in any number of ways. And I'll probably do some more things with that. I'm going to put you on pause. I'm sorry. Hopefully, I didn't lose that because I get mixed up with some of these things. He smiled. All right, here we go. So let me do the share. First, let me open it up. There you are. I've been doing Zoom for a lot longer than most people. That's another long story of of course, my long and checkered life. But I still get mixed up on certain things. But I'm not mixed up right now. I don't think I am anyway. Okie doke. Here we go. This is this PowerPoint's titled Part 3, Featuring a Change. There will be one more, and I think I'll be kind of done with that at that point. And what I've done is taken a PowerPoint I've used and I've adjusted some things I've used in other places and broken it up into chunks for you so that you can absorb some of this material and apply it to the discussion questions and general questions that you think will work and keep this in your academic heart for what you need to do after that. Okie doke, here we go. Okay, it's part 3, it's 5743, Futuring and Change. And I'm just kind of dropping back before I go forward. I had begun last week to take you through the three phases of futuring. And typically, and again, they're type 1, type 2, type 3. One we said was information gathering. Cannot emphasize that enough in terms of how your decisions will be shaped by the kind of information you get and the way you approach what the information appeared to be telling you by way of your analyses. Then you take it to type 2, where that's really a continuation of what the information may suggest, except it slows you down a little bit because now we're talking about two-dimensional, which I said last time was more of a cause and effect. I'm not going to read it all to you, except to point out that it's a natural progression of information gathering. And it's simple projecting. It's not, heavy duty thinking. I just heard this about an hour ago that President Trump has to decide what to do with the Iranian crisis, the Iranian-Israeli crisis, in the Mideast if the Iranians don't begin to negotiate in faith with their nuclear ambitions. And one of the choices he's going to have if they don't cooperate, supposedly, is he's may need to um, drop some bombs on them. And that's a decision. That's a choice. Now, let's future that. I'm not going to do that in this lesson. Let's future that for its causes and effects and for the what those causes and effects may suggest for the world, for our country, and for the immediate areas under uh, in that kind of danger. And that's how it works. And again, we're talking about what values come into play and what kind of systematized think tank thinking, design thinking follows. And we said they were type two. I only showed there was really three, but I only mentioned one, or rather two. First one is what we call trend analysis or trend, fancy word coming, extrapolation. And trend extrapolation is basically looking at which way a trend is going in terms of a graph or something like that, a line graph or a bar graph. Uh, and what that is actually is a history of what has happened. And it doesn't tell you what's going to happen next. It just suggests what it does. So one has to be careful with trend extrapolation because it has value, but it also can be dangerous if you misunderstand what the lines are, uh, how those directions may take. So I generally stay with two strategies here. There are many, but in terms of the skill sets. One is called futures wheels, and the other one is called cross impact matrices. This is from last week's conversation. And we're looking at futures wheels first, and you can see I gave you an example here of what a futures wheel at the beginning may look like. Well, where you might, let's say for argument's sake, you have a building or a department where the children have difficulties with problem solving. That's the future they have. It's an issue, and what does that mean in terms of how these children or the school may be affected by that? Now the arrows aren't set up properly in the chart here, but what I did was I just modeled really one thread for a moment, where the teachers may seek new training to learn how to teach problem solving differently, presumably based on whether they've done good root cause analyses that I emphasized last week. And so we've got something to work with. And then they work up to, well, the next future is resources are shifted towards more professional development in problem solving. All well and good. Now, does that mean that we add $50,000 to the professional development budget? Or does that mean we take $25,000 away from the basketball budget? Just as an example. Or do we tax the community for more funds? And so every consequence has its own ripple effects. And that's what this was intended to demonstrate. That's how you do a futures wheel. It is not, he shouted. It is not a brainstorm. You just can't write any old thing down there. It's based on what you've done because you've brought your stakeholders through extensive information gathering activities. So they're not going to say, oh, well, the Martians are coming. Maybe they are, but that's not part of this because you haven't any evidence, I don't think, to substantiate that. And you take it from there. Now, this is how you would develop one. All right, you would place a potential future in the middle, like I showed you here. Then you begin to project. That's an important verb to use. Possible outcomes in the connected circles. And then you begin to project the outcomes of the outcomes of the outcomes in the conversations and exchanges among your stakeholders. And then what you do, when you think that you've exhausted the point, then you say, okay, let's talk about what you think the probables are. Usually I say, put a little star in the circles that you think are probably going to happen, those futures that you think will happen or likely will happen. And then I ask them to circle or highlight what I think, which of the preferables extend from the probables. Notice the evolution of the thinking here. But for the most part, I want you to stay, and you would want your stakeholders to stay in the probables, not in the preferables. You'll see more about why that's the case later in a moment. And this didn't come out the way I wanted it to. I'm not sure why. Let me go back. Okay, why did I mess that up? I'll have to fix this, but there's really two slides on top of each other here. The second kind of if-then approach is cross-impact matrixing. Matrix is the fancy word for a chart, okay? And in a chart, now you're looking at how the impacts of the effects of the probables you're considering or the ideas that you're looking at will affect the groups. So, for example, if you say, well, we're going to, and again, you have to kind of figure this out here. We, I want to almost go back now, but I won't go back now. I haven't got enough time. Uh, where you try to project the outcomes of the probable futures down the one axis, and then you try to identify a couple of probables. Three or four is usually good for most situations. And then you have to do what goes across the chart. You'll see that in a moment. In fact, let me go to that because it's clearer. You put in what you think the probable futures are. Let's say you wanted to look at achievement levels, um, and you see a probable future if depending on how much uh, professional development you want to possibly use as a solution to this. A probable future could be that nothing changes. A probable future could be that teachers may become aren't real thrilled with the professional development for any number of reasons. Or it could be, as a third probable future, and we could put many more in the box too, that there's a clamor for technology that we can't pay for. And then we had to figure out ways to shave money from here to there, to reslice the pizza pie. Now, to go back to this top, this blue row up here. Uh, then you put people, places, things, ideas, depending on the topic, across the top, across the x-axis, I guess that is. And although these boxes are deliberately left blank, and if I had you in a classroom, we'd be doing this together. We'll take the one on the bottom because it's, well, we'll take the achievement level static for a moment. So if the achievement level stays static, what does that mean for the parents? How will the parents respond to that? And by the way, there's more than one future in each box. I'm just trying to keep this simple, where there's a concern about their children's growth. And there's also a concern about their property values. That's two legitimate futures that come with this idea that the levels haven't changed. When we didn't fill in on purpose, well, ask yourself this question. You truly should do this on your own. Um, if the levels stay static, what does that mean for the children? What does that mean for the teachers? What does that mean for the shared vision we talked about already, or the lack of shared vision? What does that mean for that? I'll do one more box. Teacher dissatisfaction with professional development. In my view, and I've kind of said this indirectly a few times, a lot of professional development is really not really very well done. But again, sometimes it's a monetary issue, sometimes it's a thoughtless issue, and there's other things we could talk about in another kind of class and get some good interest out of. Student dissatisfaction with professional development. If the teachers are dissatisfied, well, what does that mean for the babies? How about the parents? Again, how would the teachers of the community respond to something like that? And the only box we filled in here was, well, what does this mean about shared vision? Well, it means there isn't any, or it's not aligned properly. And it leads to haphazard, which is worse sometimes, I think, than no PD, or faulty teacher development. And they get taught the wrong things, or taught the right things, but very poorly without practice. And you can see now how the futures begin to impact upon each other. Now, what I always suggest and I don't remember if the next slide says this, but I'll say it here now, that you do a futures wheel first and then a cross impact. If you're not going to do one of the two, don't do the cross impact, although I would suggest that you really should do both. And sometimes this takes a very long time, but in a faculty meeting or in a committee meeting of a PLC meeting of some sort, uh, you can you'd make the time. You shoehorn it in if I were you. Here's another example of a probable, it's actually the same one. So how you would do this, again, I'm going to call you a facilitator. I like to use the word catalyst, but because catalyst is about turning people on and empowering each other. But we'll use the easier word, which is facilitator, a word I don't like. And here's some things to remember because you're leading this or you're asking someone you trust to do what you would like them to do to complete a cross impact matrix. You don't rush it, okay? You acknowledge that there can be several outcomes in each box. It gets a little clumsy sometimes, and you just have to figure out a way to make that as clear as you can. The better their systemic organizational thinking or training is, the better the matrix will be. And that's if you don't have those kinds of muscles, it's going to come out here in a negative way. You don't say this has to be done by tomorrow at 2 p.m. You're flexible with the completion because sometimes people go home and put their head on the pillow and wake up in the middle of the night with some more ideas. Believe it or not, I promise you that. It's very important to debrief this with everybody. Hey, we have this chart here, and we looked at all these probable futures, and then we wanted to see how these probable futures will impact people, the students, the teachers, the parents, the community, the Board of Education, the tax base, whatever you want to put there, and ask for their input. So what do you think? Have we caught everything? Does this give you a general direction or inclination about how you want to approach? I'm going to whisper the word, the preferable future. And it's very important to do that. In fact, debriefing is an important word, especially when we get to type 3, thinking in a moment. So it's the same premise repeated. Now, do you have to do type 3? No. Should you? Yes. If you only go through from type 1 and 2, you're going to get folks to think differently than they were thinking before they get engaged with you. However, if you want to really get where the rubber meets the road and where you see some good things beginning to truly and take root in people's educational souls, SOULS, uh, you have to go to 3. Type 3 is futuring and is three-dimensional. I mentioned this quickly, I think, in the first PowerPoint 2 weeks ago. If I throw a rock in the middle of a puddle, yes, we can see the ripple effects on the surface. But don't you wonder about what happens as the rock goes down into the bottom of the puddle or the pond, about whether there's ripples down there too. Of course there are. You just can't see them as well. And those are the things you really want to get, uh, what you want to understand. And there's many ways to do this, and they are fun. They will make your hair hurt. I'll say that again. They'll make your hair hurt, no pun intended. Uh, and that's why some people sometimes avoid doing this because it does make people's hair hurt, and it also um, is arduous. It's not something that comes like this to people. All I can say is if you do it, you won't regret it. If you make the time for it, because now you'll get people to truly get their arms around what's all of the ripples, both on the surface and below, to control them somewhat. There's lots of ways to do it. About to show you. I'm going to show you two quickly. I'm going to show you two quick methods. They aren't quick actually, but I'm just going to mention them. And then I'm going to begin, he shouted, to show you a third. I'm not going to take this to the end today. I'm going to going to take that up next week because I want you to really understand how to go about That's the third premise. And so essentially simulations, and by the way, not a commercial, not a commercial, not a commercial. My latest book, Co-Creating the Future, is a simulation of futuring problem solving for action design. And simulations are great ways to forecast the future. Wonderful ways. The old think tank thing. I'm not trying to be a wise guy, right? Only because my wife and I are very aware of what's going on, literally, that was as we speak, about the possibilities of the United States uh, bombing Iran. That's a real issue. Now, don't think for a moment, or I would like to think, let's put it this way, that the president and his closest advisors and his Pentagon people and so forth are sitting around a table someplace uh, playing, and they might be using AI for this too, by the way, or they might be bringing in newer experts, experts about Iran, experts about Israel, experts about our own capabilities, experts about what the other countries in the Mideast may be thinking about the impact of what we may be considering. And they're playing this out in their heads. They're simulating it. They're simulating it. The simulation is a very powerful way to see how the probable futures that are emerging and suggest ways to achieve the preferable. Now, I'm not going to read this to you. You can read it yourself. You can have it as a PowerPoint as well. But there's some very valuable information there for you to take to heart in your own toolkit as you begin I'll mix metaphors, your toolkit or your muscle set as you begin to exercise skill sets that you have not used before as leaders, potential leaders. Most likely you wouldn't be doing as an intern either. So all the more reason to acquire these skill sets here in this course. Another way to do it, and this does make my hair hurt, is what they call backward histories. A backward history is what it sounds like. You project out, I'm making up a number, 10 years. And you say, well, 10 years, and that would be 2035. In 2025, we bombed Iran's nuclear facilities. And now there's nobody here left in the world to talk about it. Well, what happened? Well, let's go back. In 2034, this happened. In 2032, this happened. In 2029, this happened. You work backwards on the probable events that led to nobody left on the earth to talk about this. So it's not easy to think this way. Okay? Think about an ecological approach. If you uh, put windmills up in the New York Harbor to generate electricity so we can close some coal burning plants or atomic plants for that matter. Uh, what would that mean for the shipping industry in New York State? What would that mean for the ecology of the harbor and so forth? So, well, again, 10 years ago, we put these windmills up and then all the whales went left instead of right. I'm making that up, not being facetious about it. This is a way to approach it. You can put people in a group to try to develop this. It's not easy to do, I think, but it's got real power. It's a movie out that I always refer to that's gotten kind of old now, but I guess, struck by it at the time. So I don't know how many of you even know the movie I'm talking about, but I'll try it out on you. Terminator 2 with Arnold Schwarzenegger, if you even remember who was. When he comes back from the future to kill the inventor who invented the chip that created the robots that destroyed the world. And by the way, Schwarzenegger is one of those robots. That's a backward history. Or if someone were to say to you, this is not, I didn't make this up, this is not an original point. If you had the power to go back in time and you could kill, I'm saying that on purpose, Adolf Hitler's grandfather, would you do it? I got some interesting answers in a couple of my classes about this. Would you do it? So what you're then doing is you're thinking about the probable futures that evolve from the fact that Hitler was probably never born. So those are two methods of three-dimensional futuring, which I recommend. Okay. Although the one I'm going to recommend in a moment is the one I recommend, and I'm not going to do that so much today. And so I do recommend doing type one, type two, type three. Always thinking probable futures before you think preferable. And that's this one here. This is the third one. I'm just going to just go to scrape the surface of this and spend more time explaining this better next week. It's called, and it's kind of connected, I think, to simulation, but it's a little bit more. It's a little bit more uh, participant based, and so it's called transformative scenario planning. Transformative is a word there because, and it's an accurate one, where in transformative, you you are really truly trying to change, utterly change, completely change how the people are looking at what they think the future may be uh, emerging, that they think might be happening. And so it's, as I said many times in the past three PowerPoints, it's often too simplistic to think two-dimensionally because futures are a part of a multi-dimensional world. Scenario planning is a futurist set strategy because now you put all the pieces together. You compare, you try to capture the issues and the themes and the probable trends that seem to be embedded in the things you're concerned about. And then you try to identify the emerging futures, the probable futures, in order to make decisions about what you want your preferred future is. Now, I'm not going to bring it up in this slide, but you can remember that last week I showed you a very simple model of decision making. It's extremely simple, but it does capture the premise of I have choices to consider, and I have to consider those choices in light of my values and my feelings and what I want to truly happen. And as I said, I'm being dramatic, but because that's worth being dramatic today, Tuesday, uh, June 17th at 1:35 in the afternoon, uh, because those kinds of conversations are taking place right now in our world. So the key word here is scenario. Scenario is our stories about plausible, that is to say, probable futures. And they're really the consequence of they're the flower of the planting of the seeds and information gathering and the nurturing of the infant plant in its early stages in two-dimensional thinking, and now we're up into three-dimensional strategies to think a future and to see what that flower actually could look like. And its consequences are very important, okay? You'll see how things intersect with each other. Yeah, if we do that, that's great, but let's take a look at this again. Is there another way around that? Very important. And you will see this money back guarantee. You'll see people's mental models changing if they truly embrace what they're trying to solve. You will see transformative thinking, not just, yeah, we'll try that. Okay, yeah, we'll do some more professional development. Let's talk about it. You're going to see, to go back to Senge and systems thinking, you're going to see some true team learning skills practiced at a deep level, not just the junk things you see in too many committees that you either have been part of or have led yourself. And that speaks for me as well. You're going to see collaborative leadership come to play. Remember that formula I showed you last week, that round circle. Those things will, of itself, if you facilitate it correctly, will be nurtured and be part of the practices and culture of the organization that you're going to lead. And decision making is going to get sharper. It's not going to be perfect, but it's going to be better than what it has been in the past when one person makes the decisions and then regrets what he or she did without talking to anybody else about it. You have to be very carefully patient about this. This is not something you can do in 5 minutes. You got to plan this through. And I'm going to stop here, okay, with how you do this. The only thing I'm going to say for the moment is you can see that what strategies have to be in place. And I will start from this point next week. You're going to form a group of think tank people. You can call it anything you want. The word I often use is futures forward, but uh, that's just a phrase. You can use anything you want. A new uh, PS37 or transforming uh, the E&L department, whatever you want to call it. But you create a council of groups of people who think in a cross section of who they are, and then you go forward. I'm going to stop here so that you don't have to try to remember all these things all at once. But I will send you this PowerPoint so you can see there's two more slides that you may want to use in your conversation. I would also recommend, whichever book you're reading, okay, that you apply some of this thinking as a lens at the books you're reading. Do you see how they mesh together or not? That's a good question. I just thought of that. Does what I've been showing you for the last 3 weeks intersect with, affect, support, align with whichever books you've been reading for your final project? Enough said. I talk fast because I just talk fast, but it's also because I didn't want to spend too much of your time doing on this altogether because I know you have things to do. So that's enough of my yapping at you. Uh, I may bring up some of this tomorrow in office hours if I think I hear a need for it, or if people who show up for office hours would like some more explanation, I'll be glad to do it there. So I hope that some of you feel the need to stop in. Take care.